So I want to show you guys other ways to do these subscriptions. But in order to do that, we have to kind of have a look at something called pipe first. There are a lot of ways that we can work with these subscriptions right here and unsubscribe automatically. I'll show you 2 more ways in the upcoming lessons. One is using a subject, and that's the one we're going to play around with in the next couple of lessons. And the other ways is just to use an async key inside the HTML, which is probably the most used one in your case, but it's not that useful for me right now, and I'll explain you that in a later lesson. But for now, let's just try and see how we can get a subject in here to actually automatically unsubscribe. And why do I want to do this? Well, if we don't somehow find a better way to unsubscribe, you might start getting things like this. So for each subscription you're going to set up, you would have to remember that subscription locally in the code, and then you would have to remember to do an ngIf in the end, and then unsubscribe. And again, it's just, you can do this, but notice the code starts being very clunky. It starts having so many things you need to remember to unsubscribe, and there's just a better way to do this by pretty much just making one subject and letting that subject decide when the component is destroyed, anybody listening should unsubscribe. Okay, so that's what we're going to aim for. So in order to do this, I have to explain the pipe to you. So that's what we're going to focus on right now. That is what we call the pipe. Now remember, the listen for message is actually returning an observable of the type string. That's what we're getting back. So an observable actually has a method on it called the pipe. Now think of the pipe as a way for us to either manipulate the data we're getting from the observable, or a way for us to actually say, for instance, if we only want to get 1, we can actually say we only want to take 1 and then automatically unsubscribe. Okay, so this is a way for us to use the observable and say, I only want to listen for 1 next call. And if you don't know what the next call is, if we go to the observable right here, just to show you, it has a lot of different methods. One of the methods is actually what's called the next. Let's try and see that. You can actually see it with the subscribe right here. Every time an observable wants to inform listeners that something's happened, they call the next method. And if you guys notice, if we go back to the component, actually when we subscribe right here, you'll notice there's this small gray text that says next. And that's actually because when I want to inform others that something has changed, I call the next method in an observable. I'll show you this in a second, so if it doesn't make sense yet, maybe watch the rest of the video and go back and try and listen to this once more. But let's have a look right here. When I say take 1, that means that the first time that you call next, automatically you'll unsubscribe. Okay, so that means that this wouldn't work for me because I wouldn't keep listening for messages. I would only get 1 message, boom, I wouldn't be listening anymore. But luckily they have another method called take until. Now this is something we can add when we want to kind of keep listening until another observable says you shouldn't listen anymore. So let's say that we make a new observable right here, and let's just call it unsubscriber. Unsubscriber. And I'll add the $sign in the end, just to explain that this is going to be an observable. I'm just going to add the $sign. And let's make that equal to a new thing we haven't seen before called a subject. Now a subject is pretty much just a class that's an observable. So let's try and go into this guy. You'll see a subject right here, extends observable, but it's already pre-implemented with a lot of things that we need from the observable. So it's a pretty neat way if you want to make your own observable, if you want to start doing some, I don't know, maybe you want to observe on buttons that are clicked in different components, anything like that, you can make your own observables like this. There are other ways to do it, we'll dive into that later, but just to kind of show you. Now, when we have this subject available, we can actually use that subject now to say, I want to keep listening until this subject is destroyed, or until this guy doesn't listen anymore. So I'll say this.unsubscriber down here, and then I want to explain, I want to keep taking here until this guy is not subscribing anymore. Just follow me right here, because what I'll do next is I'll, instead of saying unsubscribe like this, I'll say when I destroy, I actually want to say the subscriber, meaning the one up there called unsubscriber, I want that guy to say next. Now notice, this is how you call next on an observable. Okay, so this is what would trigger this subscribe right here. And then when that is done, complete, meaning that this observable should now not work anymore. It should be ended. And when that is ended, this method will be run and say, okay, this guy is ended, so I shouldn't listen anymore. I know that's kind of a lot to kind of get in at once, but again, try and go back and watch the video again. This means that I don't need this guy anymore, so I'll get rid of that subscription. But it also means, which is pretty neat, that I can actually reuse this now and just reuse the pipe and actually add it down here, and now I don't need this guy either. Okay? And that means that I can get rid of this second subscription here, and that also means I can get rid of all this noise down here. Okay? So the cool thing here is if you are forced, like I am right now, to kind of have a push method for these different arrays right here, and you might need multiple services listening. Now I only need to take until one time with unsubscribe, and I only need to destroy one time. And again, if more services were kind of put into this that I also needed to listen for, I could just reuse this guy again and again and again. Now we can work more with the pipe. So this is just a first view of the pipe method, but we can do so much more with the pipe later on. But again, let's just get rid of all the noise right here just to show you, and let's see if we still have the same functionality that we did before. So let's try and go to our application again, and we'll try and go away. There we go. It's destroyed, and we'll try and go back. And now when we get a message, we should still only get one hello, right? So let's try and go away, go back, send a message. We should still only get one hello. And that means that we are still good to go. Everything is still running. We are now unsubscribing a bit differently, a bit more complex maybe, but it should work just as fine. It's just easier as we kind of grow in multiple listeners, multiple observables. We can always just use this unsubscribe to get out of the listening inside those observables. And it's a lot cleaner code this, and now you might see it in other solutions, so now you know what it's all about. I know I didn't write unsubscribe correctly, but you'll figure that out. I'll just change the name for the next lesson. See you all, bye bye.